Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'm a watch nerd. So today I'm going to explain to you what a watch crystal is, and give you a little bit of an insight into the different types available to you in the world of watchmaking today. In its very simplest terms, a watch crystal is the transparent glass that covers your watch dial, protecting it from the elements, and also giving you a clear view of the time. The crystal prevents the dial underneath from getting dust or dirt on it, which may cause problems with the inner workings of the watch or may obstruct the hands, for example. It may just even make the dial look dirty, and the dial is protected by the crystal from that. It also gives the watch a more complete and sort of polished aesthetic. The first watch crystals used on pocket watches will have been made of untempered mineral glass, which is basically like the glass you'll find in a window pane. And as you might expect, being out and about in the elements, that was very prone to breaking and cracking and smashing, and glass would likely get on the dial, cause damage to the watch itself, which is not particularly fit for purpose. So you'll find in a lot of vintage watches that you'll get a hunter which has a hinged doorway, which you have to open up in order to see the dial and see the time. And that obviously gives it that extra level of protection. But it wasn't particularly fit for purpose. And so modern watches have developed new ways of doing that. And so if you're a modern crystal, you'll find usually one of three different options. You'll find acrylic crystals or plexiglass crystals, modern mineral crystal, or sapphire crystal. So acrylic or plexiglass or Hesselite crystals were developed for wristwatches in the 1930s. Now, being made of plastic, these were much less likely to break than untempered mineral glass, and they were also much cheaper to produce and were able to be produced on a mass scale, which was perfect for the blossoming wristwatch market at the time. So if you find yourself buying a vintage watch, basically from the 20th century, the chances are it will have a plexiglass crystal. Now, whilst these crystals were light and relatively durable, they were very, very prone to scratching, which is not ideal, but isn't the end of the world. So if you do buy yourself a vintage watch or something and it's got a load of scratches, what you can do is buy scratch removers such as Polywatch, which you can get on Amazon, and you can just rub those scratches off. Now, these crystals are still used in manufacture today, but on a modern watch, they're generally considered a cheap alternative to the other crystals available. And they are quite often a bit of a turn-off for people because plastic isn't something that screams quality to people anymore. So they're not as desirable as they once were, but they still hold an important place in watchmaking. So I next want to talk about more modern mineral crystal. In the 1970s, a method was developed to harden mineral crystal using a salt bath, which was much harder and much more resistant than what it had been before. This meant that you had that feeling of quality that you get from having a real glass crystal, but you weren't going to be worried about it smashing at the drop of a hat. Today you'll find this sort of crystal on more entry-level watches that want to give you that feeling of quality that comes from having that glass crystal, but they don't want to break the bank by forking out for sapphire crystal. So Seiko, for example, use their mineral crystals, which they call hardlex, on their more affordable watches, which makes them more accessible to a mass market. And that has a really important place in watchmaking. Whilst much stronger and more scratch resistant than an acrylic crystal, a mineral crystal is still prone to scratches, and unfortunately those are much more difficult to remove, if at all. But that doesn't mean that mineral crystals don't have a very important and very useful place in the watchmaking market. So if you want a less expensive watch, then a mineral crystal is more than likely what you're going to get. Sapphire crystal is the highest quality crystal available on the current watch market. It was developed by French chemist Auguste Vernouillet, who used aluminium oxide powder and superheated it under intense pressure to get the hardest, strongest, and most scratch-resistant crystal by some margin. It's actually almost impossible to scratch it, and believe me, I've had a few knocks on this, and it's difficult. But as a result, it's also, by some margin again, the most expensive. The only issue people sometimes cite about this crystal is that it's a very reflective surface, which can be quite annoying in some lights and can even impair being able to read the time. So a lot of manufacturers will rub an anti-reflective coating on. But to me, it's really not a problem because all the other properties are so far above other crystals available on the market that this is really the best crystal for you to get. As a result, almost all modern luxury watches will be made using sapphire crystal, and for me it is always a decent sign of quality, and usually something I look for when I'm buying a watch. So now you know a little bit more about watch crystals, and so hopefully next time when you come to buying a watch, you'll know what you're looking at and you'll know what you're looking for. If you have any other questions about watch crystals, or indeed about anything else, do put them in the comments below and I'll make sure I try to answer them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and make sure you come back and join me again for some more watch content. But until then, cheerio.